Hi. Hi, this is Silk, and you're watching Sister to Sister Can We Talk? And I am back here once again for 6 weeks with my girl, Dee Dorsey from EBAM, and the Reverend Dr. Marquita Carmichael Burton. What's up, Doc?
Good to see you.
We are so excited to be back here. We just don't know what to do. So we're just going to jump into this hot topic. Over the course of the 6 weeks, you'll hear what we've been up to. There's been a lot going on in our lives, and we'll talk about that. But I'm going to jump right up into this topic. If you want to call us, if you have a question or a comment, don't forget to give us a call at 915-5202. So, ladies, y'all already know I started researching. I got to put the glasses on. We're going to talk about this hot topic. And the topic tonight is men crying in the dark. Okay? And I know when I said to a young lady today we were going to talk about men crying in the dark, she said, why? I thought you were talking sister to sister. But if we don't talk about our men and what needs to happen, it affects us over the long haul. Definitely. So that's what we're going to talk about. So where I'm coming from is when using the terms man up.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, man up, boys don't cry, a young man showing their emotions, okay? And we don't realize, because I'm guilty, I've done it too, in the past of my son fall down, a little girl falls down, and we're like, we want to coddle her, and oh, baby, baby, baby. But when a little boy falls down, it's like, you better get up from there. You better man up. Okay, but then we can't understand years later when that young boy now is manifesting behaviors that he doesn't know how to display his emotions. Right. So I want to talk about that. What do you think about that, Dee?
Definitely. I think it's important right from the start to encourage them to utilize those emotions. They're there for a reason. Everyone has them. It's human. It's not just a male or female thing.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. Dr. Burton?
And I think that it's very important for us to start inside the family and making sure that we understand gender roles, because a lot of times that's where it starts at home. We define what it means to be male. We define what it means to be female. For example, we do it even from the crib. We're not putting pink in boys' rooms, right?
Right.
Boys wear blue. We're not putting doll babies in boys' rooms. Right. We're already telling them ahead of time what we expect from them as boys and what we expect from them as men, and what we expect from them in terms of their gender and their sexuality. And we're setting the tone from that early on.
And I'm glad you raised a valid point, because one of the things that I was talking to about with a male friend of mine the other day is that mainstream media plays a huge role in defining our men these days, okay? Just recently you had the young man, I think it was from Miami, that came out that he was being bullied on the team, and you had more men laughing than being supportive of that. It was just like, okay, is he really kidding me? Okay, you're talking about being bullied, man up. What do you think about that man up comment, callers? Give us a call at 915-5202. This is Sister to Sister, Can We Talk? The other thing that I wanted to talk about is the men hiding their emotions.
Wait, can I just jump in real quickly? When we were talking about that, the football team, and talking about that, I looked a little bit online, and what I found was very interesting, because that particular player that was being singled out for being the larger one, being doing the harassing part, has had a history of bad behavior, all the way going back to his college time, has had a history of hazing, a history of harassment, and even so they had a video of him making racial overtones, racial threats and things like that in a public place. And so we're hearing only a small piece of what the harassment actually was. Was it just so much that nobody wants to sit at the table with this guy? That's all rookie stuff.
Right.
But this is something that goes a little bit farther. Definitely. And then again, it touches back to what you're saying about what does it mean to be a man, right? And sometimes what it means to be a man is to walk away from foolishness.
I agree with that. And I think if you think about when we had the first show and we were on the air, one of the things that we talked about was hurting people hurt. Okay, and I'm sure that we talked about, because Reverend Burton and I worked on a project called A Ride in the Dark, and we're going to get to some point to talk about that when we're ready in later shows. But one of the things that we talked about, hurt people hurting, is these are not conducts and these are not characteristics that are being displayed, because they're not. These are manifestations that are happening for something that happened to them as a child. Because we are clear that hurt people hurt. And in as much, we find that the emotions, the feeling, okay? We're all human. You know, me and my sister, we have this huge joke. I remember when we were kids and we would go to McDonald's, okay? And we would always say, oh, yeah, this is the time we're going to get a Big Mac. And they would always say, you're not old enough to get a Big Mac.
Right.
And I remember one day my sister said, well, how old you got to be to get a Big Mac, okay? And it was then we started getting Big Macs. My point in that analogy that I'm making is that you're not old enough to cry. That's feminine. Okay, put that down. That's feminine. Little boys, remember once upon a time we all played with Barbies. And every once in a while you had a brother or cousin that wanted to play. And even Mattel came out with Ken. But yet it's not okay for little boys to play with dolls.
Yeah.
Okay, but then they turned around and made superhero dolls. And now little girls can't play with the superhero dolls. So it's like really, really crazy. So I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about big boys not crying. Okay, that's huge for me because it's so difficult for a man to allow you to see him cry. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that we talk about as far as relationships with a lot of our moms that we work with is they don't see that emotional side of their man. They don't feel comfortable to cry with them. Even to the point where some of the moms aren't comfortable showing their emotions around their men because it becomes unacceptable because they can't deal with it or they can't handle it even when their woman gets emotional around them. So I think that's a really big thing, and of course it does stem from the childhood things that they've went through. Every emotion arises to remind us about something that we've already went through.
Definitely.
I think something in there too that as women we need to be mindful of, and that is the messages that we're sending to men about what we find to be acceptable in terms of manhood.
Excuse me, Reverend Doctor. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air with Sister to Sister. Thank you for calling. Do you have a question or a comment?
Well, I have a comment. I know that a lot of times we as women basically are looking for love from a man, and he's not able to show us that love because he wasn't taught to love and to be sensitive and to care about our feelings, because that's what we teach our daughters.
Exactly.
And that's the breakdown in the household. That's why a lot of things, you know, are messed up. Even as we have single fathers, or we have just a single mother, but the father wants to be involved with the child life, what does he teach them? He doesn't teach them, oh, well, this is how I feel. He never can express how he feels about anything. And we're left as women and as daughters is, I don't know if my dad really cares. I don't know. He never tells me he loves me. You know, that type of thing. So do you have any idea, like, what can we do to change this cycle?
I think, first of all, and you raised a valid point, caller. We thank you for calling. Let's dialogue about that a little bit. And then once you hear what we have to say, please feel free to call back in, okay?
Okay.
Thanks, hon. That caller, she raised a valid point, and I think for myself, it's communication. I can tell you that for myself, I was guilty of that because I was a single mom, okay? And my dad was a good man, but he was a manly man, okay? He was a manly man. He wasn't a hugging, embracing type of man. I remember that for me and my generation growing up, Papa, my grandfather, sat in his chair. Papa had his own chair. He did the manly things. He paid the bills. He did everything. Nana was the nurturer in the family. She's the one who took care of, you know, all of the household stuff, okay? The woman role stuff, so to speak, okay? And then when I got old enough, my uncle, God bless the dead, Uncle Ronald, he was more, well, my uncle was gay, but I mean, he was the manly man, but he was gay, but he loved to cook. And everybody thought that was, my Uncle Ronald could braid, and they thought that wasn't okay, okay? And it's those definitions of the manly man. So, caller, you raised a valid point. What do you feel? How do you feel, Pastor?
Yeah, one of the things that I'd like to say to the caller and to all of us really is when we talk about how do we change a culture, we start at home. And we start with the ones who are the first teachers of the children. And those are the parents and grandparents and the family. We have to be the ones to decide and determine what is acceptable. So when we get men later on who are not able to show emotions or not able to show feelings, if you stop for just a moment and come back to the example that Silk gave in terms of how we teach boys when they fall down, how we respond to them when they fall. Instead of just saying to them, get up and brush that off, we have to nurture them as well, because hurt is still hurt. They scraped their knee also. They're bleeding also. They are in pain also. So if we don't take the time out to listen to little boys when they say that they're hurting, then we train them to keep their feelings inside. We train them that their feelings are not important. And we also teach them that when something is hurting you, hit it. Right? When something is hurting you, shut it down.
Right.
Those are the lessons that we're teaching early on. So then as they get older, the messages don't change. And even as women, one of the things I started to say is that we have to also be mindful of our roles when we say things. If a man is crying, you know, he's a wimp, he's soft, and all that kind of stuff. Not that he's caring, not that he's sensitive, that he's soft. We're not interested in that. We want somebody that's more thuggish. We want somebody that, so then you decide what it is that you want, right? If you want somebody that's more thuggish, somebody that's more out of touch with their emotions, somebody who's not prepared to enter into a real relationship, then say that, as opposed to getting someone like that and then saying, I want you to talk to me.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely begins at home. Like you said, with any change, anything that we want to do within our communities, it has to start within the household. And definitely as women in the relationship, it's not just how we express ourselves to our children, but also how our children see ourselves, express ourselves with one another as spouses.
That's right.
How do we address the father in the home?
Yes.
Are we always looking at it as just macho and he's never, sensitive? We're never showing affection, and we're never appreciating the communication that comes across. Thanking them for saying how they felt. Because a lot of times I think it becomes the communication about how you really feel about a situation. People shut down.
Right. Yeah. Right, and I agree. And I think the other thing that I wanted to say, piggybacking off of what the caller called in, we have to stop castrating our men at an early age, okay? And then even in our relationships.
Absolutely.
Because I find that, listen, power to the people. I'm all for my feminist movement. I'm glad that we have sisters that burned their bra and everything else. But it comes to a point that we cannot strip a man totally of his manhood. I remember, one time being at a girlfriend's house and I didn't even want to be there. I tried to small up myself, so to speak, because her and her guy were dialoguing and they got into a serious argument. And one of the things she said to him was like, I don't need no man. I can do this all by myself.
Right.
Okay, well, I mean, realistically, we like that strong black woman. But I mean, once you get to the point where you start castrating a man, then what's the point? Okay? Emotional abuse is something that I want to talk about because I know a young man who recently just filed a lawsuit because he was being abused by his girlfriend for like almost a year. And every time he called the police, they laughed at him.
Right.
Because they was like, come on, man up.
Right.
That little bitty girl did you, but she was kicking them, biting them, scratching them. And I know this is a touchy subject for somebody because Pastor Burton and I talked about this. We were really easy to jump on the bandwagon with that whole Chris Brown and Rihanna situation. I'm not saying that Chris Brown was correct. I'm not a diehard Chris Brown fan, so I'm not rallying up the call from Chris Brown. But what I'm saying is what was Rihanna's accountability in that? Because verbal abuse is real. And if you say certain things out of your mouth, listen, I remember years ago when my son was young and he would come home and it would look like he fought a cat. This little girl just scratched him up all the time. And I was one of those mothers that was guilty. You don't hit little girls. You don't hit little girls. Until finally I got tired of my son coming home looking like he fought a mountain lion. Okay? And so I said, the next time she puts her hands on you, tap her. And the mother said, I can't believe that you did that. She's a little girl. Then I said she should only hit little girls. Because if she hit this one, if you hit, you get hit back. Now, I'm not condoning domestic violence. I'm not condoning some big dude. Y'all know my husband, how he's like a big dude hitting on somebody. But where is the line drawn? Where do we educate that we can coexist together without verbally abusing each other or physically assaulting each
Right.
other.
One of the
Before you go,
things-
Pastor, let me just remind you, you're watching Sister to Sister. Can we talk? Give us a call, 915-5202, if you have a question or comment. I'm sorry, Pastor
No, you're
Burton.
fine. You're fine. One of the things that I like, you and I had a conversation a little while ago, and we were talking about the whole man up and what does that mean. And